Hey and welcome to Neverwinter with Aragon. Mod 19 has just hit the previous server, and with it came the new trial, the Zariel challenge, as it's currently named. As with my previous video, I was Paladin healing, and now I decided to see how it is when I'm Paladin tanking. Currently, you can see I'm switching my powers. This is because at the very beginning, I need to maintain a lot of aggro against all the DPS. So then, after I've done the initial burst of damage, I go and I switch back to my defensive powers. The main defensive powers I like to use is Binding Oath for all that stamina regeneration, and Absolution when I know I'm going to take some big hits or I'm running low in HP and I need more of that damage resistance. Smite then, of course, is our great and lovely hard taunt, which just uses our divinity pool, so we can essentially spam a load of it at the beginning, so that's like really awesome. A hard taunt will basically put you 10% above the damage value that the DPS have, and so yeah, it's very handy that way. Anyway, as the tank, you can see I get stunned there. This is the tank buster, so I'm the one who's stunned, which means that the other tank has to take the aggro before she hits me. If she hits me while I'm stunned, she'll do 1.6 billion damage and I'll die. There's nothing I can do to resist it. You're just straight up dead. You messed up the mechanic, you're dead. That's punishment. So it's like in my previous video with healing, you have all the same mechanics. However, you are the one who has to take all those hits from Zariel. Now, as the two tanks in the trial, I like to set it up so that one of us will just take the aggro from Zariel, like all the time, yeah? You'll maintain that threat and keep it from the DPS. So that's your job, right? While you maintain the aggro, at certain periods you get stunned again, like this. This is Tank Buster. It's the duty of the other tank to hard taunt the boss while you're stunned. They take the aggro, and they take the big hit, which is like 4 to 5 million base damage of that judgment, that tank buster, and that's all they really do. They make sure they have their powers up, their damage resistant powers, and they have their full shield just for that big hit. Meanwhile, I take the aggro back and make sure that I don't die. Here's the tank buster again. And yeah, another thing to keep an eye out for when you're the tank, don't stand among the DPS and don't stand very close to the other tank, because if you're standing next to each other, that tank buster, the initial stun effect, is actually an area of an effect. So you want to make sure you're not surrounded by people. With the changes to healers, as a tank, you have to rely on your Stone of Health a lot. You can see in my cooldowns on those item tray, they're kind of messed up at the moment. They're pretty bugged, which you still have that normal cooldown timer. It just doesn't show it there anymore. It's all screwed up. So you just have to kind of remember when you're going to be able to use it and when you're not. Here we have a wing flap, my slow ass tank. You have plenty of time to move before you all get pushed, so that you don't get pushed all the way off. So yeah, so we're basically just going through the rotations of the bosses and trying to do enough damage so that she hits that 50% mark and we phase her. I'm continually holding the aggro, getting stunned for the tank busters. Meanwhile, the other tank's duty is to take the aggro when I'm stunned and take that big hit. I feel like I'm repeating myself now, but that's all there is to it as the role of the tank. So just don't die, don't get those vulnerability stacks from the Daunting Knights or the Spreading Knight that spawn on the platform areas. And yeah, just keep taking those hits and make damn sure the DPS don't take the aggro, because they'll just die. The general base damage on her at-wills is 1 million, so she can pretty much just one-shot a DPS if they don't have any shield. Every time there's hypothermia, it's not called hypo, it's called Scathing Light. It's the one where you have the arrows that pulse and you need everybody bunched up. When that happens, I like to use my Shield of Faith with the feet Sheltering Light to keep everybody healed. You saw it. If you go back, you'll be able to see it. Anyway, so now it's phase 2, and these two shades spawn. Shade of Fire, Shade of Ice. I felt the other tank kind of has better aggro at the very beginning. I don't want to spam my smite because I need to save my divinity for the tank buster of these shades, because they hurt like hell. They do basically the same amount of damage as Zariel does on the tank buster. So the healers have to keep you healed. You don't want to drain too much of your stamina. Here's the big tank buster. Luckily, I was using Forge Hammer, so it's actually pretty easy to tank that. I'm using a Forge Hammer because I'm relatively new to tanking, and yeah, basically it's safer and you won't die as easily. The Forge Hammer essentially halves the damage you're going to take for 6 seconds. Anyway, as soon as you're hit by that tank buster, you get a debuff called Killing, which means that the shade will do 4 times the amount of damage to you. Here we get hit by the tank buster again, and we have to quickly switch, yeah, and not get hit by the other boss's at-wills, so you can't tank each other next to each other, essentially. Those area of effect, they're huge, so if you're healer or DPS, you do not want to stand anywhere near in front. So now we managed to kill the DPS, managed to kill the other shade, so it's just this shade. I get hit by the tank buster, then we switch, I get behind the boss so I don't get hit by those AoEs, because those AoEs will do like 3 to 4 million base damage per hit, so you'll die super quickly. Now, since I'm the tank and I have nothing to do, I just go and absorb a load of those balls so Zariel's hope doesn't get lost, while the other tank just keeps the aggro of the shade, and we switch again when he gets hit by the tank buster, which is now, you see? And then I take it, and he has to move around. Unfortunately, I don't know what was in his head, but he got a bit confused and moved a bit to the front, and you see he just gets one shot there, just straight up gone. Anyway, now we're on to phase 3. Zariel's HP goes back to full HP, back to 100%, and you basically have to DPS her down all the way to 50% again, and we'll go on to phase 4. So in this phase, her rotations are actually much more simpler. However, the mechanics are more stacked on top of each other. You can see here she's doing 2 white noises, or 2 weight of virtues in a row. It's a huge test for the healers, and generally, if you're with another fighter tank, you want to channel that daily, the one that gives, I think, 30 damage resistance to everybody. You channel that daily behind the boss with all the DPS. Anyway, I get stunned again for tank buster, switches, and I take immediately the aggro back after that tank takes the big hit. And I just keep tanking her. I'm basically doing all the easy work, just tanking the boss's at-wills. Meanwhile, the other tank makes sure he has all his stuff for when he needs to take the big hit. So yeah, we managed to, she does the same rotations there. She's doing the cleave, then the distance cleave where she teleports away, and now she does the holy, that's holy circle. It's actually Parthelion, I think, and the other one's Antiparthelion. Yeah, they're confusing names. You can look them up in the ACT if you use it. Anyway, now we have a quite fun one where you need to rotate around with sword portals. If you saw my previous video with the Paladin healing, you'll see the same mechanic in it. However, this time we actually get to phase 4, but we don't get very far into phase 4. You'll see. Anyway, we have a lunge again, move to the side, and so on and so forth. As this tank, the tank I'm being, I need to make sure I don't get those vulnerabilities. If also the other tank needs to do it too. If the other tank takes the vulnerabilities from the daunting lights, the spreading lights, then he'll most likely die to the tank buster. If that happens, I think you might see in this run, you need to switch the aggro and the other one will maintain it, and you need to be prepared to take that tank buster. Anyway, there the daunting lights spawn in. I let it initially burst and then I jump to where it spawned, because in this spot I know I won't get hit by any of the spreading lights or the spreading daunting lights, so I'm safe enough to just tank the boss here. You can see the other tank is never staying next to me. In Tower of the Mad Mage, you generally would have your 2 tanks next to each other. Anyway, this is Hypothermia or Scathing Light again. Unfortunately, I don't have my daily. Not quite sure what I used it on. But anyway, they should be okay. And yeah, we get through it. I'm continually just tanking all those hits, all those at-wills. Those at-wills are doing 1,000,000 base damage per hit, so she does like 500k if I don't resist it at all. You can see there are 8 runes. Everybody has to position themselves on a rune except the 2 tanks. And you also get a tank buster in that phase. And yeah, the other tank needs to be on the ball to switch quickly. Here you have grid, or I like to call it crisscross. So you basically want to line yourself up so you don't get hit by either, because you get a bleed on you if you ever get hit by those portals. Here again we have the spreading light. I jump into where it initially burst. Here you can see Zariel next to the chat announces. That means she's going to do that weight to virtue, which will damage, unavoidable damage to everybody. And now she does it a second time. This is like the big check for the healers. They need to make sure they have the divinity to at least cast the area of effect twice. That's the Paladin healer with the sheltering light. Here I have a ton of lag. I don't know what's going on. Possibly internet, possibly computer processing just not being up to it. Anyway, I ended up using a lot of my divinity there on my tab power accidentally. But it should be okay. I get hit so much, it's really easy to just main that divinity. And these cleaves, you just want to tank them, face tank them, because then you keep the combat advantage for the DPS. After that, she teleports away again, and you can just get behind her. If you're quick enough, you'll know, and you know that's going to happen, you can just get behind her. Here we have Holy Circle, and Paranthelion, whatever. You just need to get away. You can see all the orbs kind of cluster up all randomly around. After that, she's going to do a ring around the rosy, or rotate around. You just follow them, find out where the initial one spawns, position yourself near the inner circle. If you're going too fast, you go further to the outside and rotate. If you're going too slow, rotate closer to the center. So now she does either a wing flap or a lunge. Here is a wing flap. You can see it's all kind of blue area, and then she has her wings up. It pushes everybody away. Now you need to find exactly where she was before when she used that holy circle. You see that area where she spawns, and everybody needs to cluster up because you know she's going to do a donut. She does. It used to be called Holy Donut, but now it's called that silly name. Anyway, we get 4 runes. I'm in one of them, so everybody has to make sure nobody else is in that rune. If you have more than one person in a rune, you take a ton of damage. You also have that same tank buster during that rune phase. Here you have those nasty spreading lights. I just position myself right next to one of them, let them burst, and then I jump on top of it. I can't use any shift power to move quickly like a DPS could or a healer. Paladin healer also has the negative of not being able to move quickly. But you have the advantage of a shield, which will protect you more so from the unavoidable damage, the main one in this trial, which is the weight to virtue. They have hypothermia there. Again, I missed to use my daily, not quite sure what I used it on. Probably just used it randomly. Anyway, we have 8 runes again, and here's the tank buster again. And the tank I'm with is great. He can take all of those hits to just face and not die. And I seem to be doing quite fine not dying by just tanking her all the time for the whole time. Just continually regenerating that stamina. And now we go on to phase 4 immediately. She spawns in these 2 angels. And these angels, when they're next to each other, they get this brother buff. And they do insane damage. You'll see they come over and they just one-shot me. It was my mistake here because I didn't know where to go. I didn't know which one to take, and I didn't take them quickly enough. Now they are just paired up, and they just go around and they one-shot everything. Like I spawn, I taunt, I take the aggro, then I die, then the other tanks revives, and yeah, it's just nuts. They do so much damage when they're together. The strategy for that is to keep them apart, and that's basically it. See you in the next one.